The Masque of the Red Death, page 485, published in 1842. Let's start with point of view. How does this story differ from the previous stories that we've read? It is still first-person narration. Find the three places in the story where the narrator refers to himself in the first person. But one of the closest stories that Poe comes to in using an objective third-person narration. The narrator is omniscient. Why does Poe use this technique? Because no one survives. How could a first-person narrator write the story? So how do we explain the use of the first person in the story? If you have any theories, write about it in your journal. Setting. Although Poe did not follow in the footsteps of his actor parents, he does have a flair for dramatics in his work. His works abound in stage settings and melodramatic effects. These are evident in the garish lighting of the story. Also, there's high symbolism in the color of the rooms.
That at the eastern extremity was hung, for example, in blue, and vividly blue were its windows. The second chamber was purple in its ornaments and tapestries, and here the panes were purple. The third was green throughout, and so were the casements. The fourth was furnished and lighted with orange, the fifth with white, the sixth with violet. The seventh apartment was closely shrouded in black velvet tapestries that hung all over the ceiling and down the walls, falling in heavy folds upon a carpet of the same material and hue. But in this chamber only, the color of the windows failed to correspond with the decorations. The panes here were scarlet, a deep blood color.
What do each of the colors represent? Think about that for a while. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. What are some of the other symbols in Poe's story? Poe's symbolism generally takes the form of allowing some object to stand for an abstraction or a personal attribute. The clock in this story, with its hourly peal of the chimes, gives to the revelers a premonition that the end for them comes ever closer. Perhaps in this story, more than any other, Poe's use of the grotesque and arabesque is clear. The association of the grotesque with the odd, bizarre, eerie, and disturbing impression of things on the overstrained human mind is linked with the arabesque to suggest a fusion of psychological meaning clearly connected with both sheer irony of events and with insinuated, mocking irony of tone and point of view. The seven halls in this story reflect Prince Prospero's love of the bizarre. The lights flickering through the windows from the braziers in the connecting passageways project glaring light that produces a multitude of gaudy and fantastic appearances.
The effect of the firelight that streamed upon the dark hangings through the blood-tinted panes was ghastly in the extreme, and produced so wild a look upon the countenances of those who entered, that there were few of the company bold enough to set foot within its precincts at all.
The sense is that instinctively the guests know that the last room equals death. The rooms are built east to west, sunrise to sunset, so the seventh room also symbolizes the end of the day, the end of life. The clock reminds us of that. Time is the one element that Prospero cannot shut out of the palace. Masks of the ball are grotesque and bizarre, and we can imagine the arabesque decor of the palace, especially on pages 487 to 488. This simultaneous grotesque and arabesque scene is strikingly akin to the grotesquerie of the German Romantics. But the important point here is that Poe uses the grotesque and arabesque together. Separately, he associates grotesque explicitly with glare and glitter, piquancy or exciting curiosity, and phantasm, and adds a half-satiric reference to Hugo's play Hernani, all in a kind of confusion of surface gaiety interrupted by the weird sense of the ominous. Hernani is set in a fictitious version of the Spanish court of 1519. It is based on courtly romance and intrigues. It is used to describe the magnitude and elegance of Prince Prospero's masquerade. The arabesque Poe associates more directly with Gothic figures, either disproportionate or disarrayed. Both terms together, however, he connects with the delirious dreams of madmen in which are mixed the terrible, the disgusting, the beautiful, the wanton, and the bizarre.
Even with the utterly lost, to whom life and death are equally jests, there are matters of which no jest can be made. The whole company, indeed, seemed now deeply to feel that in the costume and bearing of the stranger neither wit nor propriety existed.
That is, the costume seems now no joke, but the further point is that the joke has become sinister, the humor ominous, the mockery horrible. The stranger seems like death himself, while the tale seems to tell of a supernatural visitation of death. It can also be read as an ironic tone poem about hysteria engendered by mood and setting. The real complexity of the story lies in its combination of the temporal and the spatial. The 7 rooms, arranged east to west, with the first in blue and the 7th in black, connotes generally the daily cycle of nature and Shakespeare's 7 ages of man.
All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy, with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school, and then the lover, sighing like furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' brow. Then a soldier, full of strange oaths, and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly, with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice, turning again towards childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all, that ends this strange eventful history, is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.
The rooms move from blue to purple to green to orange to white to violet to black. Orange, the 4th room, represents midday, blue is dawn, purple's an infusion of red warmth, beginning of life, the sun. Green connotes growth, aspiration, youth. Orange, fulfillment of life and ambitions. White is all colors, a sudden and chill contrast which evokes decline, old age, composition, and the approaching death. Violet is a deeper color than purple, more blue than red, less warm, closer to death. And of course, black equals night and death. So Prosper's palace becomes a metaphor for nature and mortality. Characterization. The only real characters in the story are Prince Prospero and Death. The prince's name is meant ironically. He is a supremely selfish man, consumed with his own worldly prosperity and social status. The prince creates a decadent milieu where, quote, there was much of the beautiful, on page 477-78. In this self-enclosed microcosm, Prospero remains oblivious to the suffering of his dominion and subjects. The prince was happy, as the story starts out telling us. Prince Prospero is named for Shakespeare's Prospero in The Tempest. Do you see any parallels? If you are familiar with The Tempest, then this could be a good journal topic or even a good paper topic. Theme. The story is clearly one of Poe's most obvious allegorical stories. As a result, it also seems to be one of his most straightforward stories, for it appears to be a clear parable about the impossibility of man's attempt to escape death. Poe is not a moralist in his fiction, but morality can be found in the tales, for as he himself has told us, goodness and truth are byproducts of art. Like Prospero in The Tempest, Poe's Prospero is attempting to create art and to use art to conquer nature. Shakespeare's Prospero succeeds in controlling a savage island and turning it into a land of idyllic greenness and ethereal music. But Prospero's control is temporary, as he well knows. Once he has lost Ariel's alliance, he will no longer be able to rule the island. He will no longer be able to fight Caliban. Quote, "The red plague rid you for learning me your language," Caliban says to Prospero. The climax of The Tempest comes in Act 4 during the masque that Prospero conjures. While nymphs and reapers are dancing, Prospero grows distracted and petulant and breaks off the mask. His imagination has failed him. His fears of Caliban's conspiracy have returned, and as a result of both, he gives in to a despairing vision of cosmic dissolution. In this decline of imagination, Shakespeare's artist hero confronts utter reality and admits, in effect, that man's creative art cannot transcend the life-threatening forces of hostile nature. Poe's Prospero also meets the ultimate challenge to his art as he stages his bizarre masque, quote, while the pestilence raged most furiously abroad. Poe's Prospero gives character to the masqueraders. They are no longer people, but have instead become, quote, a multitude of dreams.
And these, the dreams, writhed in and about, taking hue from the rooms and causing the wild music of the orchestra to seem as the echo of their steps.
Prospero has combined light and color, arabesque sculpture, wild music, and the rhythms of dance to create his dreamland out of space, out of time. Only the measured, hourly chiming of the ebony clock threatens to dissipate the fantasy. But the echoes of the chimes die away, and the dreams continue to live. Prospero, like Shakespeare's Prospero, controls the scene and transcends the limitation of nature until at the midnight hour, the figure of the Red Death, the counterpart of Caliban, appears at the Masque. Prospero's failure at first is signaled not by the imminent threat of death, but like his namesake, by his troubled thoughts. His convulsion and anger towards the intruder indicate the failure of imagination even before he waves his hand to end the masque. His fearful command to his courtiers, "Seize him and unmask him, that we may know whom we have to hang at sunrise from the battlements," is both impotent and utterly mundane, the conventional reflex of a petulant earthly ruler. Death strides majestically past him and through the 7 rooms. Poe once more underscores the exact sequence of the polychromatic decor in symbolic triumph over each stage of earthly life and over Prospero's art and aspiring imagination. While the courtiers shrink from the grim figure, Prospero acknowledges this thing of darkness to be his own. In a self-destructive charge, he pursues the specter of death westward into the 7th apartment, and predictably, death gains its midnight victory in the western room where the dread clock and macabre appointments have been the artist's ultimate challenge to his powers of imagination.